Okay. Well, I want to welcome everyone here. My name is Phil Long. I am chair of the Program and Services Committee of OEA-R. We are bringing you this webinar today. The other members of the committee are Judy Novak, Joni Watson, Kathleen Purdy, and Donna Smoot-Walders. So our goal as a committee is to serve members. And when we say members, we definitely are looking at our OEA-R members, but we're also having events like this later in the day so that our active members can participate. So we appreciate all of you being here. In looking over the registration, I see where a lot of you, when it asks if this directly affects you, you've said yes. And hopefully we'll be able to get your questions answered. Thank you, those of you that sent questions in ahead of time for our presenters to look at. They will address those throughout the meeting. And as I understand, then there will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. So I'm very pleased to introduce to you our presenters for today. Judy Novak, who represents NCOEA on the OEA-R Advisory Council. And also Judy is a representative from OEA to the NEA on the Committee for GPO WEP. Mark Hill, our OEA Secretary Treasurer. And I'd also like to welcome then Stephanie Salvador from NEA Government Relations and Dan Ramos from OEA Government Relations. So just to let you know, this is being recorded. Now, sometimes with the retirees, I have to remind them of that so that they watch what they say. But for you guys, I'll just say this is being recorded in case you want to share it with other colleagues who would like this information. So we realize that this is an important topic. Those of you that have been around for quite a while in education, this has been a topic, but it really seems to be at the forefront right now. And I know I'm excited to hear what our presenters have to share with us. I think they're going to tell us about GPO WEP, the status and action that needs to be taken at this point. So with that, I will turn it over to, I know Mark and Judy have some things, and let's get on with it.
Thank you, Phil. So thanks everybody for joining us at 5 o'clock on Monday. And the good news is the polar vortex has left us. It's actually above freezing for the first time in a long time here in Columbus. So I don't know why they said temperatures would be above normal because of El Nino, but it was a big fat lie as far as I'm concerned. But I'm happy to be here with everybody in the warmth of my office. Yeah, we have a really important topic to talk about tonight, and I really appreciate everybody to come on. And what I am hoping is that you leave this meeting with some action to both evangelize among our own members and people you know to talk about them, and also to make sure that you have your questions answered. I did read the questions ahead of time that were submitted in the registrations, and I think we've got most of this covered. As Phil said, we have Judy Novak riding shotgun with me here today. Also, Stephanie Salvador was kind enough from NEA. GR, she helped organize a lobbying effort to repeal GPO WEP that Judy took place in. I'm going to have Judy talk about her experiences with that and how her own personal story of how GPO WEP affects her. And then, so we're going to start off. I'm going to kind of give a little primer on GPO WEP because I want to make sure we all have the same base of knowledge. And so I'm going to share this. Phil, if you would do me a favor, sometimes this gets tricky with slideshows and sharing screens. So just make sure that when I flip the screen that it does actually flip. And if it doesn't, tell me so that I can take a stab at making it happen. All right. So uh,
Okay.
yeah, let's end this, right? Um, did the screen change there? Yeah.
Yeah,
Huh?
you're good.
Okay. So GPO WEP are letters that stand for something that affects really almost all of us, especially if we've worked in any capacity outside of the public school system and earned credits in the Social Security system. It also affects us if we have spouses, either still with us on Earth or late spouses who work in the Social Security system as well. Every state in the nation has somebody in it who is affected by GPO WEP. So it's a really big topic, and I want to kind of go over it a little bit and hopefully help you understand what it does. So the GPO and WEP, and you want to be careful when you're talking to people. We use GPO and WEP, and when we talk about it, it's almost like we always assume the people that we're talking to understand what we're talking about. And it's really important that, first of all, we know that people understand what those two things are shorthand for. So there are two parts of Social Security reform that was passed in 1983, signed by Ronald Reagan into law. That was part of a law that was a comprehensive fix to shore up Social Security 40 years ago. And the idea there was they would increase contributions to Social Security and create what is now called the Social Security Trust Fund. Those of you that remember the 2000 election will remember it was referred to as a lockbox. And the idea was that we would build up this Social Security Trust Fund to cover the baby boomers when their contributions were inadequate to cover Social Security. So the government has been theoretically buying bonds or, storing this money. It really isn't. It's part of the general fund. It's a pay-as-you-go thing. But there is a Social Security Trust Fund that is backed by United States Treasury bonds. So GPO stands for Government Pension Offset. And this is something that is particularly pernicious for public employees who have a spouse in Social Security. And it reduces or eliminates Social Security spousal or survivor benefits. And for most of us, it's the survivor benefits is where it becomes very, very sticky. Who also receive a pension from a non-Social Security covered government job. And I'm going to stop there. Ohio is one of 15 states in the nation whose public employees are part of a pension system and exempt from the Social Security system. This goes all the way back to the 1930s when Social Security was enacted into law under President Roosevelt during the depths of the Depression. And states who had pension systems for their employees already in place had the opportunity to exempt themselves from Social Security. And many of the states that were many 15 states have public employees that are completely out of the Social Security system. Other states have kind of a hodgepodge of public employees who are in and out. And by public employees, it's anybody that gets a government check, right? So for their employment. So for us, it's ESPs and teachers, but it's also our principals, state legislatures in the Ohio State Legislature are also they hope to draw pensions from OPERS, State Highway Patrol, people who work with them have their own system. And in addition to that, we have the police and fire have their pension system as well. So all of those public employees in Ohio are exempt from Social Security system, never contributed to it as long as they were in public employment. So that's the GPO. It reduces spousal benefits for folks who also receive a pension from a non-Social Security government job. The windfall elimination provision it reduces Social Security retirement benefits for people who also receive a government pension from an exempt state. So again, STRS and SCRS. That means if you worked in any capacity prior to or after being a school employee, then you have gained Social Security credits in the Social Security system. And once you get 40 quarters of Social Security, you're eligible for benefits. And the way the windfall elimination provision works is that once you start drawing Social Security, and if at the same time you're drawing a pension from STRS or SCRS, that means you get your pension benefits reduced by an amount depending on how much you made while you were working in a Social Security covered job. So the impacts of both of these are they can significantly impact your income in retirement. Your pension doesn't get reduced. Your Ohio pension stays the same, but any benefit you might have received from Social Security gets pared back based on formulas that they have. So who's covered? These are the 15 states, including Ohio, who aren't covered by Social Security, and they're affected by the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. So the dark states are states where no school employees are covered by the Social Security system. And then the lightly blue colored or gray, slate gray states have some in and some out of Social Security. And then the ones that have no coloring at all are all school employees are in the Social Security system. So that's quite a map there. But just because a state has the employees themselves are not covered by Social Security, I want to emphasize again, and I will show you a resource that NEA has on their website that shows that there are employees in every state in the union, retirees, who are affected by the GPO WEP. So the government pension offset, it applies to public employees who received pensions who became eligible for those pensions after July 1st, 1983. And by the way, if you're old enough to remember 1983 and you're retired, congratulations on making it this far. Public employee retirements receiving spousal benefits as well, or more commonly survivor benefits. Just to be clear, spousal benefits for Social Security are if you have one spouse drawing benefits from Social Security and the other one never paid into the system, they receive a benefit as well that's less than what their spouse would get, but it's in recognition that there are two people. It's recognition of so-called housework. It goes back to the one-income families that were more common back in the 1940s and 50s. That's why that's there. Oh, I went the wrong direction. And then the windfall elimination, the government pension offset reduces spousal or survivor benefits by 2/3 of the retiree's SERS pension amount. So for instance, if a retiree gets $2,000 a month from STERS or STRS, their Social Security survivor benefit could get reduced by up to $1,333 a month. That's 2/3 of 2,000. And that, of course, I hope that's obvious that it could significantly impact your combined retirement income from both Social Security and your pension. Just a personal story. My mom was a school secretary in Paulding, Ohio. She retired with a school employees retirement system benefit. My dad was a truck driver. He worked for an independent trucker till he was 63, and when he retired early under Social Security. My mom and dad, both of them together, did not get paid a lot of money between the two of them. I think the most they made in any given year was around $50,000 a year for a family of four, me and my sister. And then so later on in life, shortly after my dad was eligible for Social Security, got cancer and died. My mom was counting on dad's full Social Security benefit because that's what they were living on between the two of them. And then she was quite surprised to find out how far back her Social Security benefit that she got as my dad's spouse got pared back. And now, it's unfair. Dad paid into the system to try, and part of the system is a survivor benefit for the spouse, and it punished her as a public employee that was not in a covered system. And that's basically the story of everybody who's affected by the government pension offset.
But
You know,
do you
and
know what?
what? I'm sorry,
If
yes?
it was your mother that died, your dad still would have collected his Social Security. And if he was given survivor benefits, he would have collected those from her pension. So how is
From
that equal?
It's not. It's a completely. It's the second thing I have there. It's unfair. It penalizes public service by potentially denying spouses retirement benefits they earn through their spouses' contributions to Social Security. That's absolutely correct. And the thought back in 1980s was that that public employees were double dipping, and that they were both getting the benefit of a pension and a Social Security, and at the same time, there was no way to put public employees on the same plane as if you had two spouses both in the Social Security and how they handled those. They didn't have the payroll tax information available to be able to make a formula. So they have this crude 2/3 formula that really punishes, among others, to me, most severely ESP employees because their wages aren't very much, and they really do, to your point, really depend on their spousal benefits. So you're right on point with your question there, and that's why we've been advocating for this for a long, long time. And I know that Stephanie's going to talk about our advocacy on this. So it applies, it says STRS retirees, I forgot, it's all, both STRS and STRS with limited Social Security earnings from private sector jobs. That's the windfall elimination program provision. So this is people who, if you worked in Social Security, and I actually have 40 credits of Social Security through work I did earlier. It's not a lot, but it's something that I just found out on the Social Security side, I'd be eligible for a small benefit at age 67. But I'm not going to get all of it because I'm an evil public employee. Retirees with less than 30 years of substantial, and substantial is defined, and it's on the Social Security site. You can see it. If you haven't created an account with Social Security Administration online, you should do that, and they will have a record of all of your givens, of all of your contributions based on your Social Security number. It's pretty simple to do. The windfall elimination provision reduces Social Security retirement benefits based on a formula considering the pension that you receive and the Social Security earnings that you had through your career. So a retiree with a $3,000 a month SERS pension and 20 years of Social Security coverage might see Social Security benefit reduced by several $100s a month. In fact, the most you can get is 90% of your earned Social Security benefit. And that's if you worked and got what they call substantial earnings for a full 30 years. So you could work a full 30 years under Social Security and contribute fully, and you'd still have 10% taken off of your Social Security benefit, even though you didn't get 10% taken off of your contributions. The windfall elimination provision punishes folks, especially in teaching, who have a career and want to switch and get into public employment and start teaching in public schools. And so it actually discourages that career switch. So somebody who works in business for 20 years actually gets punished by this law when they switch to a STRS pension system, because when they are eligible to retire at 65, they don't get the full benefit, even though they paid fully into both systems. So it disregards all of your career contributions that you make throughout a career, and it provides the very name for this provision is offensive, that you worked and that you're getting a windfall. Even though you paid fully into both systems, it's called a windfall. And that is enough it should make all of us really angry that it's called that. So, just to kind of wrap this up, why are they unfair? I think it should be fairly obvious, but it penalizes public service. It discourages career changes at a time when we have a shortage of both teachers and ESPs in public schools, and it imposes a financial hardship, especially when benefits are reduced in retirement when you're counting on them. So that's what it is. And at this point, we're going to talk about what NEA and OEA are doing about this. So I'm going to invite Stephanie Salvador from NEA GR to talk about NEA advocacy that they've been leading. And by the way, I got a question on this in the registration is why aren't OEA and NEA doing anything about this? In fact, this has been a multi-decade effort to repeal this law by NEA and OEA. As long as I've been active within the association, we've been lobbying on this issue. Our NEA directors at every one of the 4 NEA meetings a year, or 3 when they go to Washington, D.C., lobby on this issue and talk to their legislators about it. It has been a full court press from this on the issue. So I'm going to invite Stephanie now on to talk about NEA and what's happening there.
Great. Thanks so much, Mark, for that overview. And thank you for inviting me to come and speak with you all today. Also, thank you, Mark, for shortening my presentation a little bit because you took a lot of the words right out of my mouth. So I appreciate that overview. My name is Stephanie Salvador. I have been with NEA for a little over 2 years now on their lobbying team, and I handle retirement security, which includes our GPO WEP portfolio. It's so great to see many of you on the call who have been working with me on this issue and attending our fly-ins, and who know very well that we have been very active in this space, both with our board of directors and with our retired members. So thank you all so much for your participation and for your interest in this issue. With that, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, it's good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. So this is the reality right now in DC. We've had quite a bit of snow over the past few days, more than is normal, more than we've gotten in 2 years. So, you know, we're glad to hear that it's going to warm up, but this has been our view for the past few days. So I'm going to go over some of the history of GPO WEP now that Mark explained what GPO WEP is, and just talk a little bit about how these provisions came to be and what NEA has been doing over the past 3 decades to get them repealed. And then I'm going to switch over to the modern current day status of GPO WEP repeal for you all. So first, these provisions have been around for a very, very long time. They started in 1977 under President Carter. The windfall elimination provision, sorry, that was the GPO, that was 1977. The windfall elimination provision has been in effect since 1983, and it was a law that was created under the Reagan administration. These provisions were based on a decision to treat pensions from certain public positions as if they were the same or equivalent to Social Security, even though they are paid for and funded through very different pots of money. People contribute to both, but they do not always collect from both. So that was the thinking at the time, was that, you know, if you have a pension, you are set. Again, this was in the 70s, so maybe it was applicable in the 70s, but not today, that if you had a pension, you were going to be okay, you were going to be taken care of, and therefore you did not need Social Security. That couldn't be further from the truth, but that was the thinking at the time. In reality, they've been punitive to many public employees and their spouses. So for the past 25 to 30 years, NEA has led the fight to repeal WEP and GPO, and it's been a long battle. During that time, we've had tremendous bipartisan support from both Democrats and Republicans to co-author specific legislation in both chambers of Congress. In those 30 years, we had only seen about 2 hearings in that span of time until very recently. I'm going to go into that a little bit further into my presentation, but actually last November, which is just a couple of months ago, we had our first hearing in years on GPO WEP repeal. So that's really a testament to your advocacy and to all of the momentum that you have helped create around this issue. Unfortunately, we've never seen any of the NEA-sponsored legislation get out of committee. That's usually, but not always, a key step for a bill to advance onto the floor of the House of Representatives for a vote, is that it has to get out of committee first. So we've never, gotten too far in the legislative process with the GPO WEP repeal bills. We have been, however, very successful in keeping the issue alive. And these are some facts on GPO WEP repeal. So this is a federal issue. Sorry about that. So Congress, not your state, has to take action on this. 9 out of 10 educators are impacted by GPO. 83% of people impacted are women. And these penalties negatively impact teacher recruitment and retention. A lot of educators, especially mid-career educators who are transitioning into the profession, are potentially discouraged from joining, given that in previous jobs they may have contributed to Social Security, and therefore, they're going to lose those benefits if they switch into teaching. So that obviously is a deterrent. Widows and widowers also lose their spousal Social Security, which is completely unfair. And given that women have a higher life expectancy than men, it tends to affect women more. Currently, 1/3 of all of America's educators teach in states penalized by the GPO and the WEP. This, is something that really could affect recruitment efforts for educators, as I just said. And at a time when we're seeing nationwide educator shortages, we should be doing all that we can to encourage young people and mid-career professionals to enter the profession. This can also affect federal workers hired before 1984, and it can affect 29% of state and local government workers. And this is why NEA partners with other unions on this issue, such as AFSCME, AFT, and other government unions who may represent these employees as well, to try to get more support for this. So this can include many professions, including first responders, educators, librarians, air traffic controllers, and others whose fully earned Social Security benefits from previous jobs will be cut when they retire. And these are the states where educators are not covered by Social Security. Obviously, Mark mentioned in his presentation that Ohio is one of those states. But if for some reason you are not residing in Ohio or you didn't teach in Ohio, it could still impact you if in retirement you decide to move to one of these states that is affected by the GPO and the WEP. So really, there are educators in every single state, because people tend to cross state lines all the time, who are affected by GPO and WEP. A lot of lawmakers, see this list and say, oh, well, my state isn't on this list, so why should I care? And actually, that is not true. There are still people, even if your state is not an impacted state, who could have earned or taught elsewhere, cross state lines, and will be affected by it. So now shifting to politics a little bit, and the political landscape that we're seeing in 2024. So this is obviously a new year, and it's an election year. The fact that it's an election year is huge in DC, because that will affect the legislative calendar, and it affects legislative decisions tremendously. 2024 is not just any election year, it's a major election year with presidential elections, House elections, 1/3 of the Senate, and a lot of governors' races as well. So if a bill has any shot at passing in this year of Congress, it's usually going to happen within the first 6 months. That's because towards the end, you have August recess and members tend to go back home. And then after August recess, a lot of them come back shortly in September, really for like a week or two, and then they go back home and campaign. So if there's really any hope of doing anything, it has to be in the first 6 months of the year. After that, they are very distracted. The first order of business for Congress is to fund the government right now. We, had 2 imminent deadlines, and this just changed on Friday. They just passed what is known as a continuing resolution, which is just kicking the can down the road and funding the government until March. So again, we're going to be back in the same situation. It's an election year, so it's very difficult for Congress to compromise in an election year, because they are always trying to make the other side look bad or make the other side look responsible. So the funding battles are going to be some of the biggest battles that we're going to see, at least in this first quarter of the year. It's going to be a challenge for Speaker Johnson, given all of the tight deadlines that they have and the new slimmer two-seat majority that Republicans hold in the House. Former Speaker Kevin McCarthy resigned, George Santos was expelled, and today a third Republican retired. I'm forgetting his name, but we're down in essence to only a two-seat majority for Republicans. So that's going to make legislating much more difficult, given that there is a more radical part of the Republican Party that does not like to negotiate and compromise. So it's going to be difficult for Speaker Johnson because he cannot lose a lot of votes from his own party. However, there is some good news for us amidst all of this. We have seen newfound support for HR 82 from the new House Speaker. House Speaker Mike Johnson became a co-sponsor of HR 82, the Social Security Fairness Act, back last year before he became elected speaker and was just a regular member of Congress, because he's from Louisiana, which is an impacted state. Almost the entire Louisiana delegation is on HR 82, so that is good, that's encouraging. The main leader of the Social Security Fairness Act is this gentleman over here, Representative Garrett Graves. His political seat is in jeopardy due to redistricting, and the Louisiana Supreme Court recently eliminated his seat. So I'm not sure. I will be talking to him in a couple of weeks one-on-one. I'm not sure if he's going to try to run for another seat in Louisiana. I'm not exactly sure what his political plans are right now, but I do know that he is very motivated to act on this issue of importance to his constituents, given the instability that he has for next year. So the first GPO WEP field hearing that we had in years was actually held in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is no surprise given that Speaker Johnson is from Louisiana and the leader of HR 82 is from Louisiana. So we saw our first field hearing in years, and it was actually in a fire station in Baton Rouge, which is a very unusual place for House hearings. Usually they're held in the House Ways and Means Committee, but I think they wanted to do it out in Louisiana, given the importance to many constituents of theirs. This is Julia Letlow. She is a Louisiana representative. Garrett Graves, the leader of the bill. Jason Smith, who is from Missouri, but he's the chairman of the committee. And firefighters, because they're an impacted profession. That's why they chose to do it in a fire station. There were 4 witnesses, and all of them were retired public servants, and they gave public testimony during the hearing, including Paula Porter, who's a retired educator from Louisiana of 38 years. So we were happy to see that an educator was selected as a witness. I am hearing from Representative Graves' office that there will be another hearing here in DC. We don't know exactly when, but we do know that it's probably not going to be focused on people who are impacted by GPO WEP. The hearing is going to be about GPO WEP, but it's going to be with technical witnesses. So people, for example, who work in the Social Security Administration, or people who work for the Congressional Budget Office, for example, that kind of technical expert who can really speak to the nuances of how the law is implemented and the nuances of how this would affect, the deficit or how much it would cost over the long term. So it seems like that's going to be their main focus, which is actually promising. We were hoping, of course, to get like an NEA member, but it's promising in the sense that it means that they are serious. If they're trying to talk to technical witnesses, they're really serious about implementing this in a way that makes sense. So the hearing in November was live streamed. I can send out the PowerPoint, but this is a link right here to the live stream if you want to go back and watch the hearing. It was open for comments, but that window has now closed. We submitted written testimony to the committee. We also encouraged many of our retired members who are very active on our task force to submit testimony to the committee, and they did. So thank you if any of you submitted comments. We definitely know that those are helpful. Now, the Bipartisan Social Security Fairness Act is not the only piece of GPO WEP repeal legislation in the House or Senate right now, but I would say it's the one with the most momentum at the moment, given that it has widespread bipartisan support and currently has over 300 co-sponsors in the House and 49 co-sponsors in the Senate. The bill is on the Senate side being led by Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, so your senator, and Susan Collins of Maine. And on the House side, as I mentioned, it's being led by Representatives Garrett Graves of Louisiana and Abigail Spanberger of Virginia. It's a little tricky now with the politics here because Graves, is kind of in jeopardy with his seat. We don't know if he's going to run in another seat. And Spanberger is running for Virginia governor. So she will not be returning in the next session of Congress. So if GPO WEP doesn't get passed this year, we're going to have to find some new House sponsors. But for now, we're on solid footing with the number of co-sponsors that we have. In fact, this bill is one of 3 bills in the session of Congress to surpass the 290 co-sponsor mark, which essentially means that it's eligible for a fast track vote under this thing called the consensus calendar. I'm not going to bore you with all these details, but essentially it means that the bill doesn't have to go through regular order. It doesn't have to go through committee, and it can just fast track straight to the floor of the House of Representatives for a vote. Because this is an election year, Representative Garrett Graves' staff has said that they would rather not fast track it right now, and they want to play ball with Jason Smith a little bit and allow him to bring the bill through regular order out of committee. However, when I pressed them on this and I said, we're running out of time, given that this is an election year, they set a deadline of June 2024, where if this has not received a vote by June, they will use the fast track option and bring it to the floor for a vote. And I think that's really important to have a deadline because, we're working under a very condensed calendar this year. So, there's a couple of next steps. We see that this bill in the House has over 300 co-sponsors. And, we should be very proud of that milestone because NEA held a day of action on GPO WEP repeal last May. And we know that that day of action helped secure additional co-sponsors, which helped us get to this point. However, in the House now, what we need to do is not necessarily ask for more co-sponsors because it doesn't really do us much good once we've passed the 290 co-sponsor mark. Now what we need to be doing is asking the House for a markup and a vote, essentially asking them to move it forward. The lead sponsors of this bill in the House released a statement after the hearing in November, urging the Ways and Means Committee to build upon this momentum and take the final steps necessary, like a markup, to send this to the House floor for a vote. So that is the message that we should all be saying right now. That's the message we should be repeating to our House members. However, in the Senate, it's a little bit different. We do need to continue to put the pressure on the US Senate, but for the Senate, we have a goal of 60 co-sponsors. We haven't quite hit our co-sponsor goal in the Senate. We're at 49. So the ask in the Senate is still for more co-sponsors because 60 is 2/3 almost of the Senate, and that's a filibuster-proof majority. So we need to get to 60 in the Senate. So in the Senate, the ask is please co-sponsor the Social Security Fairness Act. In the House, it's please bring this to committee for a markup and a vote. 2 different requests, given that the chambers are in 2 different places. The House is a little bit more advanced than the Senate on this. Now, there are many ways that you can contact your members of Congress. NEA has links to our website, our NEA Action Center that has a call to action. I will send out this PowerPoint after my presentation so that you can click on these links. And they're very easy to navigate. Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm going to, it took me to the web page and I was going to try to share that with you guys. Give me 1 second. Okay. Can you all see my screen now? Great.
Yes.
So this is a map. That's what you should see. This is the map. That's the link that I clicked on. This is not our action center, but this map is very helpful because it tells you a little bit more about GPO WEP, but it also tells you about the impact on a state-by-state basis so that you can hover over your state and see the impact. So right here, for example, in Ohio, you can see how many people are impacted by WEP and GPO, or either or. There's a total down at the bottom. And for Ohio, there's 162,000 people who are impacted by WEP and GPO. And, you know, you can obviously tailor it to whichever member of Congress you're talking to, but that's a really powerful point. You can also see that in every state, back to the earlier point that we were making, there are people who are affected because you can hover over every state and you see that no state has zero. Tells you a little bit more about the impact of the GPO WEP. It tells you all about the bills that we are supporting if you want to research any of these bills. And then it also has our call to action, where if you click on this, you can email Congress. This is the form that I was speaking to you of. Plug in your name, address, email, or mobile phone if you want, and it's a pre-filled message for you. It really doesn't take much time, just a couple of clicks, and it'll actually send 3 messages based on your address. It'll send messages to your senators and your representative. All right, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now. And I hope you can all see your PowerPoint. Let me know if you can't see my PowerPoint. Great. So these are the other bills that I was speaking of. Obviously, the Social Security Fairness Act is the one that we're focusing the most on, not because we think it's the best bill, but simply because we think it's the best bill that has a chance of passing. It's the best bill with the most support. However, the best bill overall, I think, is the Larson bill, the Social Security 2100 Act. However, it doesn't really have a chance at passage because it's not a bipartisan bill. But the bill is more comprehensive in that it would do more than just repeal GPO and WEP. The first bill is just a straight repeal. The second bill would do other good things, like expand and strengthen Social Security benefits and ensure that wealthier Americans pay their fair share. I believe the payroll FICA tax right now is at about $164,000. So that means that if you earn more than that, you don't have to pay Social Security on any earnings above $164,000. I can tell you there's a lot of people in DC, lobbyists and senators. I mean, lobbyists for like big oil companies and tech lobbyists and senators who make much more than that. And so, you know, it's not a very high bar actually for a big portion of the country. And so there's a lot of income that is left on the table because of that cap. All right, and so with that, that concludes my presentation. If
Wow,
you
thank
have
you. Thank you, Stephanie. That is awesome. That's great information. I will tell everybody, Stephanie said she will share the PowerPoint. You can just send that to me through email, and then I'll make sure it gets where it needs to go. I did put a link to the website that Stephanie had with the map, the list of the bills, and the take action button on there. So we'll talk about that in a second. Before we go to Dan, I'd like to invite Judy to talk because Stephanie, as she said, oh, by the way, Stephanie, if you'd hang around for Q&A, I'd appreciate it.
absolutely.
That'd be great. I want to invite Judy Novak to talk about her experience at the Day of Action. But Judy, first of all, let's let everybody know, how does this issue affect you personally?
Well, personally, I worked in a family business since I was in 7th grade until like until 98. And so I was paying in for my own. Also, I was not allowed to draw any of my husband's. When I went to Social Security office when he passed away, and I asked about a widow's pension, and it's like, oh no, you're a teacher, so you're not eligible for that. So it has cut my, also, I do want to bring up too, that Social Security is taking out of your stipends, or if you're a union officer, things like that, it's also taken out. So you are actually paying into it in some way. A lot of people are.
And
The other thing that I would do is I substitute in a career center, and a lot of those people do not have any idea that this is going to affect their Social Security. One of the auto tech men just recently retired, and he was shocked. He had worked for 22 years in a garage before he started teaching at the career center. And it's just like, well, I can't believe it. And that's one of the problems, is a lot of people don't know.
And how about talking to everybody about your experience when you participated in a day of action last spring?
Okay, I'm sitting here looking at my notes, and most of this stuff you guys have already talked on, but my trip to DC was very informative, and it was exciting to go. I had never gone before. A lot of the people were there were NEA directors or other people who had already been there. I was the only one from our state at that time, but I went with some people from Virginia and got to talk with their representative. Then these people also told their senators about my story, because a lot of the senators, they don't realize that the teachers themselves paid into it. They think they're just trying to draw off of their husbands. So I did visit Troy Balderson's office, and he already was on board, but I did get to talk to his representative. At that time, I did not get to talk to either of the senators, but we already knew that Sherrod Brown was on board. Senator Vance was not on board, but just recently he has signed on. We also had an opportunity to meet together, and we were prepped by Representative John Larson and Garrett Graves, and they had some questions and answers for us. And so I think of.
Great.
I put off collecting Social Security for as long as I could, because when I went for my husband's, the guy there said, oh, well, maybe you want to hold off if you can before you collect Social Security, just in case they do away with GPO WEP. So I took that to heart, but last May, I finally did apply for Social Security, because I got my little notice from their office that said, you are not eligible for any more interest on your account, so you need to start withdrawing. So that's my story.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, I don't know, Stephanie, if you knew that Senator Vance had told our NEA directors that he was in support of repeal, but he might be a target for getting him to co-sponsor that bill.
Oh, that's great. I think I have heard that.
He has signed on, actually.
Oh, yes.
Yep. After I want to say it was Dwayne Marshall who met with his team, and we got confirmation after that meeting through his state director that they were signing on to the bill.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Yes.
and what a great segue. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Ramos, our GR director for OEA, is going to talk about the stuff we're doing here in Ohio and advocacy here that you can participate in. Go ahead, Dan.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Thank you all. Thank you, Stephanie, for the deep dive on what's happening. GPO WEP obviously is something that I know my team, in particular myself and Robert Davis, who's also on the call, who's one of OEA lobbyists, who handles retirement issues. We've been working obviously with OEA-R, with Mark and others to do some advocacy. As Stephanie and Mark pointed out, this is something that, on the state side, our advocacy needs to go, be pointed at members of Congress, because they have the ability to repeal GPO WEP. However, at the state General Assembly level, this is also being discussed. So first and foremost, if you haven't heard of it, the Ohio House recently passed what's called House Concurrent Resolution 6. This is a non-binding resolution that the General Assembly can pass that essentially calls on Congress to repeal GPO and WEP. So just initially it was not both, but due to the impactful testimony from your Secretary Treasurer Mark Hill, they amended, I want to say it was WEP into the bill, or GPO. I can't remember which one was amended in, but one of them was amended in that wasn't present. The House recently passed it. So in December of this year, with a vote of 85-0, HCR 6 was passed. It is now in front of the Ohio Senate. So the Ohio Senate has taken it up. It is currently in front of the Senate Government Oversight Committee, and actually is receiving its first testimony this week. So on the 24th of this week, it's receiving sponsor testimony. So in Ohio, if you're not familiar with the legislative process, you have to have 3 reads of a bill. Its first read will be in committee. Its first read usually is the sponsor testimony, and then you'll have proponent opponent following that. Most definitely, we are considering submitting testimony, whether it's we bring Mark back out in front of the Senate committee, or we submit written. We're going to definitely speak in support of HCR 6, but we really encourage you all to reach out to your state senators and encourage their support of House Concurrent Resolution 6. This is a bipartisan passed resolution, and essentially, even though it's not a binding resolution, it really is impactful to members of Congress to see that the State General Assembly is saying repeal GPO WEP. So that's the first update I have. Again, that hearing's on the 24th. And we really encourage you to contact your legislators. We also are from the state level, we are scorecarding HCR 6. So if you hadn't seen yet, or if you weren't at the RA or been on one of the briefings, we recently updated our OEA legislative scorecard. I just put a link to the scorecard in the chat. This at the top of the page, and I'm going to share my screen real quick. Oh. I
need to make you a
you need to make me a co-host, yeah.
Which I'm happy to do, Dan.
Okay. So essentially, on our scorecard, you can see which members of the General Assembly, in particular the House, voted for it. And then you can also look up who your state senators are by putting your address in and finding their contact information. So let me quickly share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so obviously this is our new scorecard. We're really excited about rolling it out. You'll see that their legislators have a score associated with them. I'm going to type in my full address, and you can see who my representatives are. Rachel Baker is my state rep, and then Senator Wilson is my state senator. If I go to Rachel Baker's voting record, I can actually see what she's voted on. And this is the vote, HCR 6 with a description. You can also download our floor letter. So for letters that we scorecard, OEA, we traditionally submit a letter saying, hey, members of the General Assembly, vote for or vote against. And we're going to scorecard it. So this is OEA's letter that we sent to the Ohio House of Representatives in advance of its vote, informing them about the impact of GPO WEP and why we support their vote for it. If you click on the link to HCR 6, it takes you to our Bill Track 50 page that shows kind of its status, and you can pull the bill text. You can see the actions. You can see all the votes that have occurred on it, as well as you can look up on our page how your representatives voted for the legislation in the House. And then on the Senate side, if you don't know who your state senator is, click on your state senator's name. The contact information for your state senator will be listed in their profile. So you can, Senator Wilson's office and Senator Wilson's email is listed there. And we really strongly encourage you to share your stories. That's the one thing here. We are going to say, please vote for HCR 6 on the Senate side, but really share your stories. Like Judy shared her story in her visit to Capitol Hill. Contact your representative, contact your senator, and urge them to vote to support HCR 6. And share your story about what the impact is, whether you are impacted already, if you're retired, or if you know you're going to be impacted, if you're active, if you have a friend or a colleague that has been impacted, or if you know people that would enter the profession if not for GPO WEP, because this is also a huge component behind our advocacy on recruitment and retention. Lastly, just on the just following up on Stephanie's for the Ohio delegation. Of our delegation to Congress, we have 11 representatives that have co-sponsored in the House HR 82. Just real quick, those are Reps Turner, Beatty, Brown, Balderson, Capter, Joyce, Landsman, Sykes, Miller, and Carey. Johnson did co-sponsor, but Rep Johnson just retired from the U.S. House to take the role of the president of YSU. So that we're going to be holding a special election later on this year to for his replacement in the House. Those that have not signed on, obviously the focus on the House is making sure that a hearing happens. But if you live in Davidson, Latta, Wenstrup, or Jordan's district, those 4 members of the Ohio delegation have not co-sponsored. And then, as we talked about before, both of our Ohio senators have co-sponsored. Obviously, Senator Brown, this is his bill. He's one of the primary sponsors of the Senate resolution or the Senate bill. And then, due to your advocacy and in our work on the Hill, Senator Vance signed on as well. So if you live in one of these districts, always like to say thank you. Like tell them, call them up, thank them for their support in repeal if they've co-sponsored. If they haven't, urge them to support it. And then to Stephanie's point about a markup hearing, 2 members of the Ohio delegation are actually on Ways and Means. So if you live in Rep Carey's district, this is the 15th congressional district, or Rep Wenstrup's district, they are both on House Ways and Means. Really encourage you to call them. At the RA in December, we had a flyer at the PAC table. I'll make sure Mark gets a copy of that we can circulate it around. It includes their phone numbers. So if you live in the 2nd or the 15th congressional districts, please consider making a phone call and urging their support for a markup of the House resolution. And again, as I mentioned, 3 big things. Call your state senator, urge their support of HCR 6, contact your members of the delegation, thank them, urge them, and then really encourage members of the House to support a markup committee, a markup hearing, and then share your story. I mean, really, this is about you telling your story. So I'm going to wrap up and hand it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Dan. I'm just going to spend some time on Q&A because some people typed the questions in. I'll do the best I can to answer. I'll go through the chat as well for the questions that are in there if you have something. But going from folks, again, somebody made a comment about Senator Brown repealing it. We just found out which of the Republicans in Ohio favor repeal, along with that Senator Vance, which is important in the Senate because we need to get to 60 senators who support it so that it can be advanced as a bill. So another one, on personal questions, here's somebody that asked, they have 1 credit short of the 40 needed. Is it worth it to work 1 year in the Social Security system to get the substantial earnings required? That can only be answered with your own personal account. I really encourage, if you have any questions about your own Social Security, if you go to the Social Security website with the government, you can create an account if you don't have one already, sign in, and it will have your Social Security record of contributions over your lifetime. It will tell you how many quarters you've contributed, and they have a table. They have a link to WEP information, and that table has what constitutes a significant contribution for that year. This year, it's around $30,000, and then it's inflation adjusted over time. I hope we've let you know, for those of you that have said how is this fair and will this affect me? I hope we've answered that question. The answer is it's not fair, and yes, it most likely will affect you. If WEP doesn't get repealed, do we get nothing from Social Security at retirement? No, you get what your earnings would have been substantially pared back. It just depends on how much you've contributed to the system. There's a maximum amount of deduction from your Social Security benefit. This year, the maximum is $527 a month. So that's a pretty good chunk of change. it was explained to me that if WEP is repealed, Social Security will go bankrupt. Is that true? I don't see Stephanie on the call right now, so and Dan, you can chime in if you want. Social Security is the number of years that it will take to get there will take, but there will be a point where contributions and the trust fund do not cover the Social Security benefits that need to be paid out. And so what happens at that point? Well, as a point of law, Social Security benefits would get reduced because the government can't make those obligations. I would be willing to bet quite a bit of money that that's not going to happen, because then the people in Congress would face angry retirees in the entire United States over this issue. So what the government will probably do is what they do now. They'll issue bonds and borrow money to make sure that they can make it. By the way, if you could hit mute, I'd appreciate it while we're going through this. Please explain how the 15 states are affected by this when Social Security is a federal, not state program. Social Security is a federal program, and they reduce the federal benefit. Somebody asked how is that constitutional? It's a spending law. There's nothing in the Constitution that requires the government to have a Social Security system, and whether or not it is equal by law, you could say that since somebody doesn't contribute to the system, they are not equal participants in the system. Whether you like it or not, that's probably what the courts would say. I'm not sure of whether this has been challenged. The windfall rule does affect individuals. That's a question. For example, if a couple files a joint return, it has nothing to do with your tax returns, has everything to do with what you've contributed to Social Security and how much you're getting from your pension. And you have to you are required by Social Security to report your pension income every year so that they can adjust your income accordingly. So just be aware of that. Let's see, I'm getting through the questions that we haven't answered yet. You will get something with the WEP. You don't get your benefits completely zeroed out. All right, let's see. More on Senator Brown. Again, go to the Social Security site and sign on. They have your record. I hope we've made it clear how much we've been advocating for this for folks that wonder what we're doing about it. And actually, what we're doing about it is asking you, because we can talk all we want, but it takes actual voters in large numbers to talk to senators and representatives to move the needle. So one of the questions is, if this is repealed, will it show up in my pension benefits? Yes, if there's a repeal, it will deal whatever the law provides, that's what's going to happen to your Social Security benefit. I don't think they'll go back in time to restore your benefits, but going forward from this point, they will. And then, yeah, somebody talking about fairness. It's not fair. There's no question about it. Retired. I've retired, for those of you who are retired over 10 years from teaching or from school employment and have not claimed Social Security yet. Why can we not gain the advantage of those Social Security resources? Well, I think we've covered that. And a lot of this is individual questions as well. Yeah, I think we've answered all that. Now to go through what's in the chat. Is there advantage to go to Social Security where they will tell you you get no widow benefits? You won't get zero benefits. They will pare them back by 2/3 of your pension benefits. That's how that works. And then, has anyone gone to court to change these unfair laws? I'm not sure that there has been court cases, but if there has been litigation, this has been around for 30 years, so it's done, and I don't think it will. The courts will say this is a legislative fix, not a court fix. That's how it'll work. Other than being unfair, what are the other strong arguments being made in favor of repealing WP GPO? That mostly it's that it has. an effect on public employment recruiting. We have a teacher shortage and an ESP shortage in Ohio and in the United States. And when you punish people with their income for becoming an educator, that makes it hard to recruit people from other walks of life if their pensions are gonna be hurt. How will the bill be funded if Social Security is presently in danger of reducing benefits to its present recipients? That's been the argument against repeal of GPO WEP, is that it is expensive, and that is true. It is not a free benefit if we were to get rid of that. And again, we're on track right now on the glide path. The Social Security is not funded as well. The question is like, well, why should we be punished in addition to everyone else? I mean, I don't think that maintaining an unfair system for public employees that they paid into fairly, saying that people, that hurts the system as well, well, then fix the system. As Stephanie mentioned, one of the things you can do is increase the cap on Social Security contributions. As she said, anybody who makes $160,000, once you get above $160,000 in earnings, you don't pay a dime into Social Security. That'd be one way to shore up the system that would be fair. Adrienne Bowden is asking for stories. She gives her email. It's Bowden. It's in there, and I can't say. Oh, it's Bowden450@gmail. If you want, so go ahead and email. If you don't have Adrienne's email, let me know. And then other than that, I think we've gotten through the Q&A. If the law changes, will people who had their limited payments have their monthly payment adjusted? Yes, almost certainly. And we will have the webinar that is recorded. I tried to get through those as fast as we could because we're like 10 minutes over, but this is an important topic. So what I will say is we will give the recording to you. If I'm asking you to do something, for sure, it would be to go to the NEA site and hit the take action button and sign that, and do as Dan Ramos asked, contact your state legislator and ask them to sign on to, is it HJR 6? Is that correct?
HCR 6.
HCR 6,
Yep.
which is a resolution to support the repeal of GPO and WEP, both of them now. That's all I have, Phil.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all again for attending, and especially our presenters, Mark, Judy, Stephanie, Dan. Thank you so much. What a wealth of knowledge and information you've provided us. I see that our OEA-R liaison is on the call, Makia Burns. So we'll be working together and get you all the information that you've asked as far as where the recording will be and the PowerPoints and the different links and all. So, as current educators and retired educators, you've been given an assignment, and we know how that was in the classroom, that if you gave an assignment, you expected it to be done. So I know that's what Dan and Stephanie are expecting from us. And as you can tell from this and the attendance, I want to give you a special shout out. We had 144 registered. And what we've been finding on most of our webinars is that we get about half that actually show up. And we had 72. So you guys are great. We appreciate that. I do want to recognize our OEA-R chair, Mary Binniger. Mary, a brief, notice that's in capital letters, brief comment that you might have.
I just would say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this, and take to heart the need to send that letter or send that note or make that phone call to do the best we can. This is our best shot right now at getting this done. So anything you can do will be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you all. And those of you that in attendance, you have our various emails and contacts. So please, if there's anything further, but I think Mark gave you very sound advice that you're probably going to need to talk to the Social Security Administration for some of your personal questions. But thank you all for coming. Stay well, and let's keep our fingers crossed that this may be the actual time that we can do something about this. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.